Every quest has a beginning, and for me, it started here. Long car journeys, that faint green glow, and trying to catch the light just right so you could actually see the screen. It wasn't just a console, it was a world you could carry with you. And now, years later, I've gone back to gather the pieces of that world again.
Let's face it, anybody knows about the Game Boy. Whether you had one or knew somebody who had one, it was one of those consoles that just stuck in the memories of just about every single person. And me, looking at this so many years later, I mean, what, how old was I? Might have been 6, 7 when I got one. I mean, I was a late adopter as well, so I mean, I was maybe like 1995 I got one, so yeah, fairly late on. And this thing here was just absolutely unbelievable. So many hours just sitting playing on various games: Kirby, Zelda, Mario, eventually Pokemon. And through the years we got inclusions. We got the Game Boy Color, we got the Game Boy Advance, and then we moved on to DS. Without this, I would have never picked up a Super Nintendo or the N64 or GameCube. I would never be doing this channel, talking about Nintendo Switch games, talking about GameCube games. But I want to go back and talk about this little gem of a console, because looking at my collection, it's a fantastic one. Let's have a look and see some of the games that I grew up with and played. So while I likely got Tetris with the console, the ones I always remember playing is Kirby's Dream Land and Kirby's Pinball Land. Kirby Dream Land was just one of those games that, for my age, was simple enough that I could sit through and play through it. In fact, I remember finding this thing challenging at one point, which is surprising because this game is super easy. But it's one of those games you can just go back to and just have a really good blast with it time and time again. Not to mention Kirby Pinball Land. Now, I'm going to be honest, this was one at the time that my mum enjoyed a lot more. She was really into the pinball. But over the years, I went back to it and really appreciated it. This is actually one that I kind of felt that was slightly underrated at the time. I think it's one of those ones I don't really hear many people talk about. But in my opinion, both of these titles are absolute essentials to the Game Boy library and are definitely worth picking up this today. With a birthday came birthday money, and I was very eager to go out and buy some games. And I remember going to Toys R Us, and this was when Toys R Us had the high shelves, you know, you used to walk on the high shelves, and what they used to have is they used to have the labels or the little printouts, and then underneath you had a sleeve. You used to pull them out and you used to be able to buy games. And the two games I bought, well, what games would you buy? Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2 6 golden coins. Now, Super Mario Land is one of those titles that is strange. It's not quite like normal Mario, but it still has a lot of the Mario connections, you know, the platform and action and stuff like that. Oh, the music, the soundtrack of this one, oh, it's just such a nice little earworm. It's such a game that I just had so much time playing. But the next one, Super Mario Land 6 golden coins, this was my jam, and this is still one of my favorite Mario games. The fact that you had a full Mario adventure, a full world map to explore, so many fantastic levels, power-ups, and it wasn't too difficult, but it was difficult enough that you were challenged. I'd managed to complete Kirby Dream Land and I was looking for a next challenge. This was the nice next jumping off point onto it. Absolutely fantastic game, and one that I just can go back to time and time again. It's just such a nice little joy of a game to play through. Now, much like most people, I got a certain game with the console. At least I'm assuming. I don't remember owning this any other way, and that was Tetris. Now, why is it that I'm unsure if I got it with it? Well, if I'm honest, I didn't really play this much. What can I say about Tetris that hasn't already been said? It's the absolutely addicting block game, and it's one that I came to absolutely adore over later years. But it was my mum who really enjoyed this one, and a few months later she picked up another game, and this game was one that I did jam with. Tetris Attack. Oh, this game is absolutely fantastic. So this is basically Puzzle League. Obviously, if you played the Puzzle League, like the Pokemon Puzzle League ones we got later on, this is more like, obviously, connecting blocks together, obviously moving them around, and then obviously you get like the little bits of concrete that come down on top. These had a Yoshi motif as well. Absolutely fell in love with this one. I remember playing this one so many times. It was easy enough for me that I could just sit down and play it and have a really good time with it. But yeah, I absolutely love this one. Now, another one that again is a puzzle game, and it's one that I sank time into it. Now, the thing is with Game Boy games is that unless it was a big game, most of the games you kind of sank maybe about 10-15 minutes into it, you know, like time, just enough time to play it through one game or something like that. And that was Mario and Yoshi. Now, this was something I think I got the year afterwards when I got my Super Nintendo. I remember coming across this game for about £10 in Game, or Electronics Boutique it might have been at the time. And I remember being given it as a birthday gift. Absolutely enjoyable. It's one of those ones where you got these little eggs, and then you kind of like, you put them in, lay it down, then obviously you put stuff in between, then you put the top of the egg down. I believe it's kind of like Burger Time. I might be wrong. I might be thinking of a different game that's like, but it's one of those games that you can sit down, pick up, and just really enjoy. And this is one of the things I have fell in love with the Game Boy, is simple pick up and play games where you can sit down and play them for 10-15 minutes and just absolutely have a blast with them, rather than sit down to complete them over the course of a few hours. So we talked about Super Mario, and I remember again one birthday I got birthday money, went out to buy a new game, and what did I find? Super Mario Land free. Except it wasn't Super Mario Land free, it was Wario Land. Now, Wario was a character I knew from Super Mario Bros. 2. He was the enemy, but in this one, he is the protagonist, and this is a really fantastic game. This is absolutely brilliant. I think I enjoyed this one even more than Super Mario 2. Just the fact you could play it, you just barged into people, and the game was, I remember it being fairly difficult. It had a lot of extra stuff on as well, which made it a little bit more complicated than just your average just go to the right and stuff like that. I remember this being a very enjoyable Easter weekend playing through this. But I do remember at the same time I bought another Wario game, and this one would unleash me onto another protagonist, Bomberman. So this is Wario Blast, and this is essentially a Bomberman game with a Wario skin. It's Wario versus Bomberman, and basically it's just a Bomberman game. You go around, obviously you put bombs down, destroy the blocks, except if you're playing as Bomberman, you have Wario and his clones. If you play as Wario, you go up against Bomberman and Bomberman's clones, and then every now and again there'll be a boss and stuff like that. I got so far in this. I remember this having a password as well, so I would used to write down the password and stuff like that, and be able to kind of go through and like do stuff like that. Oh, I love this game so much, and this is what I'm keep saying. I love this game. I love this game. It is one of those consoles where just about every single game I owned as a childhood, I have strong attachment to. Let's have a look at some more obscure ones though. So the first one we're going to talk about is a game that I got enticed to by Nintendo Official Magazine, and that one is Street Racer. Now, a lot of people have fond memories of the Super Nintendo version of this, and I can completely understand why. This one is the Game Boy version, and it's fine. It was for like a young me. It was one of those games I remember getting for Christmas, and I think it was the only game I got for Christmas at the time, and I remember having a blast with it. But it wasn't something that I kind of would say, oh, you must get it, it's an absolute must. Now, this one is an interesting one. Now, this is Godzilla. Now, my brother at the time was absolutely obsessed with the Godzilla franchise. We had the Godzilla movie on at the cinema, if I remember rightly at the time, and we got this, and yeah, this is like a puzzle game with probably the most annoying tune that is still stuck in my head today. So yeah, it wasn't quite the Godzilla game I expected to play, but it's a fun little puzzle game. It's not one that I kind of go back to time and time again, but it's one that I am looking to maybe re-experience as an adult. Another one I would love to re-experience is this one. Now this is one that is a bit obscure, and this is Monster Max. Now this is one that I remember buying at Tandy. That's right, can you remember Tandy? So Tandy was like an electronic store that kind of sold like CD players and tape players and all the kind of stuff that you would kind of expect from the time period. But they had like what was like a back room, which was like a warehouse, and then you used to be able to go around there, and they used to have bits and pieces, you know, like cables and bits of PCs and stuff like that. We used to always have a good rummage around, and they started getting in random Game Boy games, and this was just stuff that obviously couldn't sell. And I remember seeing Monster Max, and I remember getting this for Christmas. So this is an isometric puzzle game. If you remember the old, I think it was the Commodore Batman game, where it's kind of like an isometric room and you've got to like push stuff and kind of jump and keep dying. It's hard as nails. It was an absolutely difficult game, but yeah, I remember this. I remember getting a Sylvester and Tweety game for the Game Boy Color as well, which was very similar indeed. But yeah, this is one I own. I wouldn't say it was one of the best games, but I remember enjoying it enough. And the next game, this one is a product of its time. So of course a certain movie came out and I was kind of obsessed with it, and I rented the Super Nintendo game and just about beat it. The Game Boy game is not the Super Nintendo game. Toy Story. Now, people went Toy Story mad at the time, and yeah, this is one that, like, on the Game Boy, it's not good. It is not a good. It's not even the Super Nintendo Mega Drive is not considered great games, but yeah, I remember this game not being anything too special. But the fond memories of it, though, it's what I would love to go back to and try again, try again. So the next game is a defining game for me. So I felt a lot of Game Boy games were very simple, even like Mario and Wario, they were kind of simple games. They were like stuff that you would be able to expect, but the next one was an adventure, and this game, this franchise, changed everything forever. This game still remains one of, if not my favourite game of all time. Depending on the time of day, depending on the day, I will say this is my favourite game. The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Now this was an adventure, like I said. This had an absolutely huge map. I still remember struggling, even just on the first dungeon, just being able to do simple things. And it was one of those times where we had like an older friend who would come and complete stuff that we were struggling with. And yeah, I remember this very distinctly, him being able to do the first one. Then we got like Bottle Grotto, and I don't know why, just couldn't do it. But one holiday, I used to take my Game Boy on holiday. I remember I played this again and I got past Bottle Grotto, and then the world opened up. But even as a child, this game was like, this just stoked your imagination. This game just like was like, oh, well, there's all these secrets. I mean, there was a map in the library in the game, and it used to show you the entire map. Obviously, me being stuck, I was just like, oh, well, this chest here, oh, that chest could have like anything in that. There's like, oh, that could be where like the hook shot could be in this random chest that's in the overworld. The boomerang could be there. Oh, and it was like stuff like that where I was just like, my mind was just amazed. Obviously, I didn't know the whole Zelda formula of key items being in the dungeons, but yeah, this was just one of those things where I was just like, oh, I need the power bracelet, and I scoured the world. I was just like, oh, I need the power bracelet to advance, not realising it was in that dungeon. This game is so nostalgic for me, and is still one of the perfect games of all time. Of course, Link's Awakening was a key title, but the next title could come out, and there was a mania around it. Pokemania. And I imported this game. I remember importing Pokemon Red. That's right, I went Red version. This game, this franchise put the Game Boy back on the map. Now, I think at this point I already had the Game Boy Color, but yeah, honestly, this game is just, honestly, what can we say about Pokemon that can't be said elsewhere? The collecting game, I had all 151. I battled in regionals. I did all kinds with this game. This game was like an insane game. Everybody I know had a Game Boy. People say it's like, oh, Final Fantasy VII was like the big one. Final Fantasy was the one that opened the door. Pokemon was the thing that pretty much rammed the door down. Everybody knew what Pokemon was. Everybody played Pokemon. It's one of those ones where it's very hard to describe how big Pokemon was if you weren't there. It was, everybody knew Pokemon, people were sick of Pokemon, schools were banning Pokemon, the trading card game was everywhere, the anime was everywhere. People didn't know what anime was at that time with Pokemon. The games were everywhere, people were playing on this, actually interacting with each other, going around to try and get them all. Absolutely insane game. I picked Bulbasaur as my first one. I also got this one as well. Pokemon Yellow version. And you see what the problem is? Yeah, this was my introduction to bootlegs with the Game Boy as well. So you can probably see there, nothing on the top. This was bought from a computer fair. And yeah, it's Pokemon Yellow, it's Pokemon Red re-released and kind of with a Pikachu edition and stuff like that. Yeah, it's not like... You just look at it now, it just looks so bad. But like back then, I mean, this was like 10 quid, 15 quid at a computer fair, which if you guys weren't aware was kind of like a convention just for like PC PC stuff. It's one of those things, it's one of those very like late 90s, early 90s like things that just get, again, if you weren't there, it's very hard to describe. But did you grow up with a computer fairs? Bring them back. I will keep saying retro game fairs. Bring back computer fairs. But yeah, this is kind of like, yeah, it came with like a very flimsy packet and like a manual. It was like rubbish. Honestly, absolutely atrocious. But I mean, I did get this game again not so long ago from Games Galaxy, so we do have an official version of it, at least now. So yeah, absolutely chuffed. So that is the games that I grew up with. So since then I have been collecting Game Boy and Game Boy Color. We'll talk about Game Boy Color as another video because there's enough to stand on there. But let's have a look at some of the other games that I got. Now I have a little bit less attachment to these, but they're by no means worse. So first up is Game Boy Gallery, 5 games in 1. And yeah, this is Game & Watch. Back when they could get away with slapping like 5-10 minute games onto a cartridge and just calling it a day. Absolutely insane that they got away with this many times as well. They released a few Game Boy Galleries one. This is one I would actually like to own a box for. A lot of the ones I picked up over the years I haven't got boxes for. Even like my old ones, I don't know if I got them. But I would love to own more Game Boy boxes. But Game Boy Gallery, yeah, this is a really fun one. Absolutely ridiculous. Next up is one that I picked up not so long ago at Games Galaxy. Again, this is Sneaky Snakes, and this one is a joy. This one's really fun. So this is the spiritual sequel to Snake Rattle and Roll, made by Rare. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, you play as these sneaky snakes who kind of go around, and you've got to kind of eat monsters and animals and make yourself big enough to go to weigh down the weight to go on to the next level. A very fun one indeed. Another one that I picked up again from Sunderland a few months ago, and this is Mole Mania. And yeah, this is this is one of those ones where everyone says it's underrated classic, and I kind of agree with it. It's not on like, probably it's ever been put on like the eShop or the online services or anything like that, but this is a Miyamoto game as well. Maybe this might be in the Mario movie. Yeah, it's you play as a mole, and it's kind of like a puzzle game and stuff like that. It's a very enjoyable one indeed. Another one, this is one that again, I bought this from CX about 2 years ago, and this was kind of my first foray back into collecting games, so it's got a bit of nostalgia just assigned to it, and that is R-Type. So R-Type is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up, absolutely hard as nails. Absolutely hard as nails. One of the most difficult games I've ever played. A really fun one though. I want to get the DX one as well. That one almost never pops up in terms of online. I think that one again was a launch Game Boy Color one. So this one as well, Alleyway. I love Alleyway. It's one of those games you just enjoy it. It's just breakout. You play as like a little paddle, and you kind of just hit the blocks with the ball to hit the blocks, and yeah, there's not much to it, but it is an absolute joy to play through. Another one, again, I'm not playing much of this one. I remember my friend had it at school, and we had school toy day. And people used to bring their own toys to school. People brought Game Boys in. I remember playing a lot of Wave Race at that time. So this was bought at like Cash Converters for like £2 a few years ago. It's a cheap game. I remember it being like cheap at the time. It was like 10 quid. But I think because my friends had it and I played quite a lot of it, I never really bought it myself. But yeah, I mean, £2. I was like, I wasn't going to say no. This was back when like you could get Game Boy games for £2 about 10 years ago. Really ridiculous time. The next one I got from a random retro box about 10-15 years ago. There was a company in the UK that started doing like, you remember like loot crates, except it was for retro games. So you used to see, oh, what consoles are you collecting for, what's this, and I think you used to pay about £30 a month and they sent you a box full of random games. But this is the way I got my copy of Donkey Kong Land, and it's minging. Yeah, I haven't really played much of this. Donkey Kong Country was never really a game that I kind of played much of as a kid. But yeah, Donkey Kong Land is Donkey Kong Country but on the Game Boy, and somehow worse. This is one I'm going to have to upgrade at some point. I didn't realise how bad of a version this was. But yeah, it was just an interesting tidbit from, like, they used to send you like random games, and then they started sending, like, I was like, don't collect Sega, don't collect like stuff, and they started sending the Sega games, so I was just like, oh yeah, I better stop now. The next one is James Bond 007. This was again another one I bought from cheap from a retro, a little bit from Nerg, about 10-15 years ago. James Bond game on the Game Boy. Surprisingly good game. Yeah, you're very much kind of having to do like undercover missions and stuff like that. Doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it should, but this is a very fun title indeed. So the next one, I don't really remember playing this one, and this is Bart versus the Juggernauts. Again, bought from a Nerg retro game fair thing a few years ago. I think I was buying something else, and I think I saw it, and I was just like, oh, you know, can you throw that in? Make it £20 or something like that for the total. Oh yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I haven't really had a chance to play it, but it's a Simpsons game. It's probably not great. The next one is a great game. This is a game I absolutely love. Quicks. So basically, you play as like a line. I mean, you're supposed to be like, I think you'd be like a little spaceship or something like that, and you got to make like little boxes, but there's these lines that are coming to kill you, and as soon as they touch you or a line, they just straight up kill you. This is one of those games that you can sink so many hours into, and it's absolutely fun as out. I absolutely love this one. Again, this is what I would love to own a box for. All of these, any of these, if I say at a reasonable price, I will be looking for boxes for. But yeah, this is a fun little one. So the next two are Japanese games, and I don't really have much of a nostalgia for them. I can see why I bought one of these ones, and we'll do that one second. So the first one is this one. I'm assuming this is a baseball game. Looks like he's sliding, doing that. I've never played it. It came with this one. I think maybe I bought a bundle. I had a few like Japanese Super Nintendo games as well. This is when, like I said, you could buy bundles of games and you'd maybe pay like £10 and you get like 4 games back in the day. But the other one, this all came with it. So this is the Medarot series. So this is Medabots. So at the time I was absolutely obsessed with Medabots, and I loved the Medabot games on the Game Boy Advance. So I had to pick these ones up. This is the Kabuto version. I don't think I played it. I'm going to be honest, I don't think I played it much. It's one of those games, it's an RPG in Japanese, and this was where I was buying games. I was like, oh, I like it in the collection kind of thing. But yeah, no attachment to either of these games, but they're in the collection. So we've seen a lot of carts, or at least carts in like the cases and stuff like that. So what else have I got? Well, I've got 2 boxed games, and that is, well, we got this Pokemon Yellow, which we talked about earlier from Games Galaxy, but we also got Tetris Blaster. Look at that. This is where I started collecting games again. So there's one last thing we're going to talk about, and it's one of those things that was just such a Nintendo move. And this is something that I played so much of this. That's right. The Game Boy camera. So Nintendo give us a very blurry camera for the Game Boy called the Game Boy camera, and this was just insane. This was ridiculous. This was at a time when cameras were still at the point where you had to you took a picture and you had to send them away for development. This could obviously, it was basically one of the very first digital cameras, at least it was the first accessible digital camera, and this had fun little games. You could kind of edit the pictures and stuff like that. It's one of those weird little oddities I don't think really many people talk about, but it's still like a fun little thing. There is the Game Boy printer. I've never gotten that because I've never ever seen the printer paper for it. I think the printer paper, the print is cheap, but the printer paper is like really expensive. But yeah, that is an absolute fun little addition to the Game Boy. Just want to say thanks very much for checking out the video, checking out the channel. If you're with me to the end, a huge thanks again. And yeah, originally this was supposed to be both Game Boy and Game Boy Color. So yeah, we've got another generation of Game Boy games. And I'll do that as another video. But for now, enjoy your tea, enjoy your games. I'm going to sit down, have a cuppa, and maybe play some, I think, Mario or Yoshi. See you there.